So today I want to welcome Ed Akay. Ed, it's great to see you again.
Greg, firstly, I'd like to say thank you very much for what you did for me a year ago. It was an absolute pleasure telling my own life story on your amazing podcast. But it's even more of a pleasure to be back talking about my wonderful mum and her success at what is now, I know it says 80 in the news articles, but she just turned 81. Really is a dream come true, Greg.
And her book was, obviously it's on Amazon. It's a bestseller. Tell me, what was her latest kind of vibe and energy to go? Has this been a project she's been working on for a long time, or how did she come across to you? Did she share that with you?
Well, that's an excellent question. So she actually wrote the bulk of her stuff in the 1970s, literally sat on it for decades, literally. She's got 4 books for sale on Amazon. The one we're going to probably discuss the most is The Fruits of Victory, talking about her hometown of Barnsley. For all your viewers who like soccer, as you would call it, is a Barnsley shirt. I don't support Barnsley. I'm a Sunderland fan, if you follow English football. But that's another story. So she talks about life in post-war Barnsley in her book, The Fruits of Victory. She wrote that years ago. And towards the end of last year, my friend and photographer, Jason Redding, put my own life story to pictures, did extremely well on Amazon, got a lot of media attention in the UK, even topped the charts in a couple of categories. And I thought, something in this. My entrepreneurial mind kicked in, published a book of poetry for my beautiful wife, Helen, as a Christmas present. That again became an Amazon bestseller. And then I thought, well, my mum, her real passion is writing. She's 80. I'm going to make her dream come true. So what I did, Greg, I said, hey, mum, send me your books. I'll get them published. And she was like, okay, Ed, yeah, watch me. So I literally went and published them myself. I used the brand I've been using as, if you like, my PR brand for many years, though. It's called Midas Touch. Published 4 of her books, and 2 thus far become bestsellers. The first one to become a bestseller was called The Accidental Spy, which was a Cold War era thriller. But the second one, which is going to be the focus of today, because it's someone which has had all the traction, The Fruits of Victory, about a childhood in Barnsley from 1945, 1962 was the one that really caught on. The media just loved it. A hometown paper loved it. And she was completely speechless. It literally was just me getting it published, ringing up lots of publications, Wolf of Wall Street style, saying, hey, you put my mum in the paper. She's inspiring. It's the sort of thing I do, Greg.
That is wonderful. As we mentioned off camera, I look forward to talking to you about other ventures, and got to get over there and at least share 1 pint or 2. So that's awesome. So, before we get into your mother's work, what was it like? Was it like growing up with someone who had such a deep creative spirit?
What from my own perspective or my mum's own perspective? Because we're both creatives. Me or my mum? Do you want me to talk about from my perspective? Yes. So personally, if we talk about me, my mum sort of nurtured it. She was very much a creative person herself. I was writing poetry from a really young age, and yeah, I don't know. I just think like being creative means you think outside the box. And it was also really good because what it basically meant was in any subject at school that required writing, I could literally, for want of a better word, as we say in Britain, piss about until the last minute and then pass the exams on the grounds of my creativity. So it was really good in that way. It wasn't as much fun though in maths and science where being creative doesn't pay off. I'd have to put effort in, but it was really good in anything that required writing.
We have a lot of similarities because, it was my father who was the creative spirit in my family, and I was very much influenced. And he encouraged, I remember the first things I did creatively was almost writing stories, but soon after, I think they were both intertwined with doing my first line drawings. And I remember, I think, I'm not sure if he showed me, but my first line drawing I ever did off the top of my head with not even looking at something, I can still do it today, is drawing Snoopy lying on the top of his doghouse, sleeping. And I can do it from memory. And Ed, briefly, I had the great fortune of actually not only meeting and becoming friends with a gentleman named Tom Everhart, who is Charles Schultz, was his Charles Schultz protege. So I got to meet him in California, and we're friends. And it's amazing, like this, how it's like 6 degrees of separation. Where's my destiny of your life? Like we'll get into, your mom's, and we talked on our podcast with you about like it's almost like it's destiny. It's like it's there waiting for you, and that's a big message about the podcast. Is I want to encourage mentorship, pass it forward, and share with people of all ages that no matter what age you are, you can mentor and you can be mentoring. These exchanges are constant growth, right? Growth exchanges. But getting back to you, that creative spirit, like, your mother, KJ was shaped by post-war Britain. I mean, how did those early experiences influence the stories she chose to tell later in life?
That's a very good question. And what I will say is this for your viewers and listeners. A good way to talk about post-war Barnsley is to imagine Detroit. That's the equivalent of Northern England, the equivalent of what Barnsley would be like, apart from Barnsley was a mining town, Detroit's motor city, but I've been to Detroit, there are a lot of similarities. So what was it like? Firstly, everything was really scarce. They had what were called ration books, because obviously we put a lot of resources into, for want of a better word, playing the shit out of the Nazis. We were shot on many things. There were lots of former bomb sites after the Battle of Britain in the 40s, and things were scarce. So it taught my mum to be very resourceful and to sort of make the most of, shall we say, a poor hand. Her family, for want of a better word, were really impoverished. She was one of five. One of her siblings tragically died. I think she'd have been about 1 year old max. But it did, instill into her the values of community spirit. And very significantly, she witnessed the birth of something which I personally view as the best thing about Great Britain, our wonderful socialised NHS. In my grandparents' generation, didn't exist. So if you were poor, you got sick. For what of a better word, you were pretty screwed. But thanks to our new healthcare system, her generation actually got looked after, which was really magical and a tribute to the good side of post-war Britain underneath the, shall we say, the scarcity.
That is amazing, because that's just inspiring to hear that, and such a blessing at such a horrific time in your country's history, to be able to rebound and come back and have such a care system, which still, I'm sure it still holds up today. We all have challenges. There's challenges, right? There's challenges in every civilized society. We know, with the technology and capability. So, that's just a beautiful thing, especially after experiencing such horrific episode of destruction in that environment. So I remember seeing the cover of the book with the gas mask in the foreground and the kids playing in the background, and not so sunny environment. It was sort of like this, the sun was there, but it was very hanging over the memory and that whole strife. So you call it, your system is called the NHS, as it's a national healthcare system?
You've got it spot on, yeah. National healthcare system, as we say in the UK, free at the point of use, because we essentially believe healthcare is a human right. It's very much intertwined in British culture since that generation.
I would say God bless, and I'd love to have this radiate to more people here, to try to almost to me demanding it. But so your mom, she explored teaching, acting, modeling, and writing. What do you think drove her to keep evolving creatives over so many fields.
Okay, so it's probably interesting to talk about the teaching first. So she basically went to university in another northern town called Hull, where she basically learned that at the time, it was obviously a more sexist time, that one of the best jobs a woman could get would be a teacher. So what she did a degree in English and history, and then she went on to train to be a teacher, and her speciality was secondary school English and history teaching. She taught at what could be described as very, very tough inner city schools. Being from a working class background herself, she knew the struggles pupils faced. But also, teaching those particular subjects gave her the chance to be creative. Give an example: a big part of teaching English is putting on school plays in the UK. I don't know what it's so much like stateside, but most English teachers put on school play. That gave her the chance. She got into modelling in the swinging 60s, which was a very, very good time in England for many different ways. I don't want to say too much on camera, but it was a great time. Summer of love, all that. But yeah,
Sure.
she always looked after herself, and naturally, she very much fit the archetype of of a model: slim, athletic, very, very presentable face, for want of a better word. And she got into acting because in the 1970s, after she met my dad, she moved to Turkey. She taught English at the British Embassy, and basically she became quite well known on the Ankara acting scene just by accident, really. She acted all around Ankara in the 1970s. She's bilingual.
Okay. And I'm sorry, bilingual and what's the other language?
Turkish and English.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's awesome. So, man, I just have to. So did she, I'm not, again, I always try to learn more and more about different cultures and Turkey. So she did plays, I'm understanding, um, in England in Turkish, or did she actually I'm sorry, she went to Turkey?
Yeah, I know she acted in both languages. She did some for sort of aimed at, if you like, the foreign audience, well, what was foreign to Turkey audience, but she could also act in Turkish as well.
Okay.
She's very,
Interesting.
very versatile. In fact, it's quite funny actually. When she comes back to the UK, we've got a bit of a culture of what could be described as Turkish kebab shops. Sure, if whilst as you know, we're both health freaks. My mum's just as much of a health freak as occasionally we do have shish kebabs. She's just grilled meat anyway. She'll actually go and order in Turkish,
Of course, of course.
and they get absolutely shocked
As there's
seeing somebody like who's my mum, is visibly very, very white looking, going into a kebab shop and then ordering, and then they're actually like, what's happened?
no, as her son, Ed, when did you first realize that her writing was more than a passion, that it was like part of her identity?
Well, what I remember is actually I got homeschooled for a year when I was recovering from illness, which we obviously discussed on your podcast. And my mum actually wrote plays and wrote novels, and she gave me some books she wrote as part of like my homeschooling. And I was like, "Oh, mum, these are
Nice.
really good." I mean, they weren't published officially, but I knew it from a very early age, and the way that she would sort of nurture my particular creative talents as well. So I knew it was very much in her DNA. I guess I very much took after my mum in that particular instance, also in my diet discipline too. My mum does not eat junk food, and I mean, you see what she looks like. Not many 80-year-olds look like 81-year-olds look like that.
Uh-huh. And that's amazing to be like educated and crafting your son in a way that is both obviously expanded your vocabulary, took you on journeys, and to know that was like written by your mom at the same time that's a really beautiful thing, man.
Well,
Um,
I'm very
how
blessed,
would you?
and I'm very very blessed. In some ways in childhood, I think I said on your previous podcast, I didn't necessarily get dealt the best hand in some areas, but I got dealt a very good hand with my parents. Bless them both.
Right, right. We spoke about that, it's a true blessing. And I think, added to that when we have our mentors that have helped shape our lives going forward, even extending outside of our intimate family, realm, it's really, again, it's a huge blessing and very, very powerful. And I think, again, that's my message in my podcast, that it can't be understated uh, or overstated, I should say, too much, that mentors mean so much and are so powerful and so critical in the development of ongoing as we interact with, our different cultures, the arts, and that communication of the essence of our humanity and commonness of just, you know, understanding that we all care about the same things. We're all concerned about the same things. We just happen to be from different periods of cultural development and tradition. But ultimately, it's nothing like sitting down, breaking bread with a family. And, you may be in some major under country that you've never been to before. And it just all comes down to, wow, this was like as intimate as your own family. So and that's why I find travel and having this beautiful ability right now to have this podcast, to talk to people around the world. I'm now, I mentioned, I think we mentioned off camera, I'm currently in Brazil, um, and kind of doing a relax, and obviously found myself available and you available to do a podcast. So it's very interesting for me. This is my first, international location recording. So I thought like,
Wow.
oh, how better to even make it even more across the pond. So thank you. Um, so how would you describe your mother as not just as an author, but as a person behind the stories? Like, what qualities define her most?
Well, she's a patience of a saint for a start. She's extremely patient. um,
Every good teacher, right? Every good teacher needs patience.
yeah, definitely. And it, she actually often says, right, her culture in Barnsley could be described as fairly hostile towards law enforcement. In northern England, working class communities do not like law enforcement, even if people are straight, for various reasons, which I'll go into later on, actually. She actually said if it wasn't for the fact she was from a working class northern background, she'd have probably been a detective, because she's very, very good at being assertive without being aggressive. And she would have said she would have probably ended up doing that if it wasn't from being from Barnsley. Because if you're from Barnsley, you don't generally have a positive view of, yeah, law enforcement. So that's another quality she has: assertion without aggression. Um, she's really, really good under pressure. Give an example, in some of the rougher schools she taught at, she was very good at calming down violent pupils. Massive gift. Hey, maybe she should have been what was called a nightclub bouncer back in the day. Who knows? Um,
That diplomat, hey, that diplomat. If you're this diplomat, to be able to control energy, to prevent it from going south to physical, is an art, and that's diplomacy, right?
definitely. She did sort of work for the diplomatic service anyway, when she taught in the embassy. So she's definitely got good diplomat. She's got very, very strong diplomacy skills, I'd say. Another good thing about her is that she's very outside the box, very persuasive, and she's a very, very caring person, very thoughtful. So yeah, she's my mum. Well, I'm going to say another thing as well. She's incredibly well
Right,
disciplined. When it comes to diet in particular, she always taught me the value of, not for want of a better word, stuffing your face with rubbish, processed crap. She in her
right.
workplace, people would say, "Oh yeah," because she went by the name Jennifer. Akay when she was a teacher. KJ is like her author's name. Jennifer Akay. They would say, "Oh yeah, this is Jen. She never eats cookies. She never eats chocolate. All she eats is fruit and grilled meat." And yeah, and she brought me up to be pretty much the same. She taught me the value of
Okay.
looking after myself. As did my dad actually as well, but
Right.
he's still got quite my mum's discipline in that way.
Okay. Along the same lines, I have to always mention my father, God bless him. When he had turned 50, he was this ferocious reader. And he wrote, but it was really, just remember him, just massive amounts of books. And he would read massive amounts of books. He'd get interested on topic and he would underline sentences and he would give me those books. And around the age 50, he really said, okay, I want to invest in my knowledge and transfer it to my children to try to empower them. And he read incredible amounts of books on nutrition, on fatty acids and all kinds of cell salts and, the dietary and all that kind of stuff. And at that time I was in working out and I hadn't quite begun my fitness career formally, but I just there started soon after. So I was empowered myself and I found myself wanting to not only practice at leaving advertising and stop to use my creative energies to sell all that kind of crap, alcohol, cigarettes, and stuff that really wasn't great for you. All the vices, all these things that people are attracted to and can become addicted to. And people would call me like they would call me like, why do you eat so well? You may die tomorrow. And my response, Ed, would be always this. I said, well, what if I don't? What if I live a long life, but I have to have somebody care for me the last 35 years of my life
Well said.
because I'm so physically right and unable to take care of myself and the quality of the experience. And it goes back to me. I live for the experience, man. It's like, what is the meaning of life? No, what is the experience of being alive? And I think that your mom and you and um, are shining examples of being in the now, being in the moment, um, being persistent, the creativity in this day and age. We know that these, as creative individuals, we are even going to be more critical to helping sustain humanity during this transition, which knowledge is becoming so, what's out there, right? It's becoming so available and everybody can kind of like, they get to a point where we know where this AI is headed in that if you have an original thought and a creative spirit, I believe it's going to be the most powerful commodity in the coming years. And probably it always has been. I mean,
Very
who
much so.
doesn't survive on listening to great music, right? To seeing beautiful art. It's in the eye of the beholder. And again, that's why, my essence, I'm an artist, my passion is fitness. And I believe that besides the fact that our country needs a national healthcare system,
You do,
same.
definitely.
I believe that our education system needs to be emphasizing wellness and self-care and the power on the mental health side of expression, which we know writing is the number one. And from there, what do you have? You have the visual arts of photography, painting, sculpture, all the, us having this, again, I think I mentioned this to you before, maybe not, but some of my listeners have heard this. I like to believe this is my conversation canvas
Mm.
in that we're
Yeah, I
creating
have heard that. Yeah, yeah.
this experiential exchange that, imagine more, right? Imagine more than just what is possible and dream, baby, dream. So like, what did it mean to you to see her finally publish The Adventures of Super Sleuth Sam in 2021? Tell us about that book.
Yeah, now that one actually, it's got published twice. I think initially, my sister helped to get it published. Nothing really happened, but it was the second time a few years ago when I sort of revamped the cover and made it a little bit more jazzed it up a bit, and I'd learned a bit about marketing a book. That was yeah, that was like that was a good starting block. But I will say about that particular book, that was the starting block. It's very much like, if you like, the sister book to The Fruits of Victory, but it's fictional. It's just basically set in the post-war era again, bit of a theme coming on post-war Britain. And it's basically about a detective story in that sort of era. So yeah, that was the
Yeah, and
starting book, and it was the thing that we built on.
so obviously, as you mentioned earlier, that her diplomacy and her toughness, her resilience, and her backgrounds, like, it's almost like the sleuth. The sleuth Sam was like, determined to uncover or make right a situation, which, again, I mean, how do we avoid situations through diplomacy and communication? And right when things go south, that's when we have troubles.
Very
Um,
much so.
her recent success, her her recent success with The Accidental Spy and The Fruits of Victory, reaching the Amazon bestseller as well. Wow, I mean, how did she react to that to that recognition? I mean,
Well, it's probably worth talking about how that came about. So what actually happened was, I got it published. And then basically, I started literally plugging absolutely everywhere. It was done very sort of old school style, saying, look, my mum's got this book out. And then it kind of got the sales up via word of mouth. I sent it to some literary circles. I created a mailing list to help her out. And yeah, I got in touch with a lot of people to help circulate it. When it had got into the charts, I then started ringing up every newspaper in areas associated with her. So, for instance, I live in the southwest of England. Think a bit like your southern states, very rural, where she taught for a period in her later life. I rang up all the local publications and said, hey, do you know what? This former teacher who taught at this primary school is now in the Amazon charts at 80, run a story. And I would ring them routinely until they said yes. I then contacted the Barnsley Chronicle, which is her local paper, got them to do the same. And I said, look, I know this does sound random, but I do actually know Barnsley. And I gave them a bit of a chat about how I knew the area, how my mum had grown up, how she valued Barnsley. And then they just agreed. And I said also as well, let's face it, Mother's Day's coming. It's a pretty nice story, isn't it? Son publishing
oh,
his mum's
beautiful.
books, getting her in the bestsellers list. How can you not love it? And so they all agreed to run stories. And she
Wow.
was, yeah, she was
What a,
ecstatic, but there's a but. But she knows me. She knows that, like, if I put my mind to something, I'll do it, and I just do not care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know for a fact, like, when I was like bringing up the publications, getting the book circulated, some people would think I was completely insane. I'm a pretty self-aware guy. People think, oh God, is this guy deluded? I thought that. I'll do what it takes, and it worked. What of a better word? It worked.
hey, look, listen, I find your mother did an amazing job. I find you as one smart, determined cookie, dude. you
Appreciate it.
you got it going on, man. You got it going on. It's very admirable. And your energy and your energy is what do you call it? What's the word? It's exhilarating. It's a strong vibration, which we all have, right? Holding on to
Definitely.
our vibrations. And when they're created, um, reverberations out to the world and cannot be not affected. But you just have to be open to understanding that it's a special thing. And I think that's even more being like in the now. Um, you know, so how does her Cold War era storytelling in her child memoir, how that reflect both imagination and lived experience?
I mean, the memoir was very much a lived experience. The Cold War one was inspired by some events, but it was, it was mainly fictional, but it had some inspiration from her own experiences. But obviously, working for the diplomatic service, you're not going to say very much, but it was a work of fiction, in a nutshell, based on her observations in that particular era. Now, you got to remember as well, Turkey was quite an interesting case. The accidental spy was based in Turkey, a lot of the story of it. Turkey was an interesting case because it's obviously it bordered the Soviet Union and it's always had a very bizarre friendship with the UK. Now, a lot of people in the UK won't like me saying this, but I actually see a lot of parallels between Turkey and the UK in that they're very different from the other countries in the region. Britain isn't particularly liked in Europe. Turkey's not particularly liked in the Middle East. They've always had this sort of strange allyship, based on that almost. And Turkey's position was very instrumental for NATO during the Cold War. And yes, she saw a lot. She also travelled around Eastern Europe, during the Cold War era as a tourist. She went to Czechoslovakia, went to Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavia was neutral. And she just picked up various ideas to inspire a book. But I just want to reiterate, it is a fictional book, not a real life one. Yeah,
So,
you must remember the Cold War pretty well, Greg. All the tail end of it, you must remember like the revolutions of '89 and stuff like that.
well, yes, for sure. I grew up, from my own U.S. experience, when there was like color TV, and all of a sudden we're getting images of our soldiers in Vietnam and the jungles of Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And then that through, I think more so personal, I don't know, knowledge or neighbors, friends of neighbors of friends, my friends' fathers. Some of them were in the World War II or the Korean conflict. My father was involved in the army, but never saw action. He was less stationed in Hawaii doing supportive stuff there. But yeah, the Cold War, the end of that, I was coming of in high school, just out of high school, in the Reagan era. Of then the wall fell down, so it was all kind of celebratory. I really consider myself just super blessed because where I put what ability, the gifts I've had of my journey. But yes, everybody knows and should know of what went on during the World War II, what it took, Lend-Lease, all the relationships of us supporting going in to try to create and hold back fascism. I have to ask you, Ed, because what would you say? Like, it's so inspiring to hear your mother, and I believe that writing and encouraging people of all ages to share their story, and not to even think it's going to be published, but just the physical act of write your memoir, your experiences, is so powerful. That what would you say to older people, Americans, or from anywhere, that power of that written word? And you've done it, your mom has done it, you've been kind of nurtured on it. And what would you share with listeners to say, to encourage them to explore more of that outlet of expression?
Now, I was having a chat with my mum about this, funnily enough. Now, we were having a chat about good old Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Now, there are plenty of things you can say about Amazon and the digital world. I'll be honest, I don't particularly like big tech. Many people do. There is a massive but to this. But that's the world we live in now. So if you're not prepared to adapt to it, you're going to lose out. Like, you can basically say, oh, I don't like Amazon. Well, fine, don't get published. The plus side of this particular world is there are more opportunities for people who would have been cut out of things in, say, I don't know, the 80s and 90s in the non-digital world. So take advantage of them. Give an example. You like your music, yeah. Think about how many people making music now wouldn't have had a chance in hell of doing it in the 80s and 90s because they didn't have the distribution network. Now you can basically, say if you, I don't know, like house music, you can get program make a house track on your laptop, upload it, get it on Spotify, job done. That's a massive, massive gift. Same thing with books. If you have an idea, there is the means to get it out on barely any budget. So what I would say is just do it. You've got the tools. It's not for the privileged
Yes.
elites. It certainly isn't. Because believe you me, my mum's from Barnsley. You can't get much more anti-elite than Barnsley. So join the masses,
I
get
think
published.
I think that is just a great reminder of that, the process. And if you don't play, you can't win. And I don't know what if people how they define winning, but I define winning just as you said, right? Go after it, look at your resources, and be open to just, there's a certain level of being vulnerable, but everybody's story. And as you mentioned, right, for coming from humble beginnings or places that we don't feel like we're elite, we are, our stories matter, and we are the consumers of some of the most inspirational stories that move us. And movies and music, and just looking at a painting and like trying to identify what that experience was like, and you hear the history behind some kind of piece of work that is all inspiring. And again, I believe that I believe that outside of like talking about, the weather, politics, sports, and blah, 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 that science, the arts, and culture are what are going to be the real glue that keeps us together and is a key factor for our humanity. But,
100.
how how has your storytelling influenced your own perspective on life, family, and history?
Okay, yeah, very, very good question. Again, so as you know, very much my core message is very much to quote your sportswear brand Nike, just do it. I'm very much a get up and go person. If I have an idea, I'll go with it. I'll look at the avenues to get my message out. I'm not really somebody who sits around, differing about and procrastinating. I very much get on it. So that's very much my core message. And that's very much how I look at life. I'm not somebody who's necessarily don't rest very much unless I have some forced to because of bodybuilding. So I kind of think my sort of high octane way of and direct way of communicating with my own story very much does reflect on my view of the world. And I see opportunity in everything. Let's look at AI, for instance. I'm going to give a bit of a golden nugget to anyone who's wary of AI. Just learn to use it, because if you don't, other people will. And we were talking about how, shall we say, negative influences on young people are leveraging social media and AI. If positive people don't, the negative ones will. It's the world we live in. Adapt.
Oh my gosh, Ed, that is so true. And I am, my learning curve. Just now, I'm going to another level of awareness and not extreme, but of practicality, of being able to use it as to my advantage, to protect my creative works, to ability to put more out in more mediums, which again, I'm excited to talk to you more again off camera about the books that I am formulating. But this podcast is kind of like my baby, and from my fitness career and my contribution. So it all goes back to what we talk about, going after stuff. You have an idea, and we talk about like what's the experience of being alive. To me, it all resonates with purpose. And what is it that I have that, I mean, again, what do we create that's not more invigorating and engaging and exciting to be alive than to share it, to have it resonate with other lives? And that's what mentors do, right? So again, goes back to just that sharing and being open to trying to understand and comprehend things, that sometimes things we we don't necessarily agree with because maybe we don't know the whole story. And again, that's to me that the written word. And I mean, I always say this, Ed. I go like, it's like, okay, sit down, just say this to anybody, sit down and try to write a book. It's not easy. It
Definitely
takes a
not.
lot of discipline, a lot of work, because you're going to be your own worst critic. And again, you have to make yourself vulnerable, put in the work, and you don't realize what you have potentially that could share to be powerful. Um, so what role did family support play in helping you, her bring these stories into the world later in life? You sound like you were like a grand cheerleader after she saw you go through your time period of your life and where you're at now. How these, how her, how this, how'd your vibe support her, encourage her?
I think it was very much a classic case of right. It would, to simplify a bit like this. Ed says to his mum, right, we're getting your books published. Send them over to me, and I'll literally upload them and distribute them, and it'll be done. She's like, all right then. And it was literally like that because my mum's very much not a diverer. She goes out and does stuff. And I actually said to my mum as well, don't turn into like one of these people who, as you've really identified, and it is something among creatives, into one of these hypercritical people of your own stuff. So you don't do anything. It's an evolution. It's like, I'll give an example. I know you're a Nirvana fan. If you listen to their early demos, they're not obviously of the same standard as Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's an evolution. You
Right.
build. It's like I was talking about her first book, Super Sleuth Sam. That was the foundation. We just put it out there, but it didn't peak till a lot. Well, it didn't peak till we released other titles. So it's a building block. You put your foundations in the ground, and then you build them. Or the alternative way is planning and planning and planning till the time passes by and then you've lost your passion and nothing happens. I'm more of get the spade in the ground, dig the foundations, build on them till you feel something better than Trump Tower. Certainly more
I mean,
attractive.
that's a great analogy. And it's a great analogy, and it's a great, it's all, again, it's like the evolution. It's all about the process, right? The benefit is in the process and to keep going. Um, you know, man, in today's fast-paced world, what do you think her journey teaches us about slowing down and honoring our creative voice?
Well, I think in her case, you could say, well, she could have done it a lot earlier, but it was a very different time. We were talking about how the publishing was a very elitist thing, and not everybody can get a deal with Penguin books because of, again, you know me, I'm a fair person. I'll give credit where it's due because of Amazon. Essentially, it's opened up the avenues for people who aren't necessarily from an elite background to get
Right.
into it. I mean, I was going to say alternative media is very important. Like what you're doing now, you are effectively promoting alternative media, which is good. It's a tool. You're given tools. So I kind of think, whilst it would have been nice if she'd done it younger, the tools weren't as, shall we say, prominent, and a lot of them didn't even exist. Like in the 70s and 80s, we didn't have Amazon. You'd have to be some posh person from London probably to get your book published easily back in those days. But fortunately, because of modern technology and modern avenues, the masses can tell their story. Some people might look down on that, but screw them. You know, society evolves and things become less elitist, so more and more people can get their message out. So whilst I think half of her thinks, you know what, I wish I'd done it earlier, who cares? She's made the most of it now.
Nice, nice. I have to again, uh, you know, it's a very bravo. It's a very wonderful thing that she, that creative voice, that spirit, it probably is alive and thriving in her every day she wakes up. That career of being a teacher and an embassy and, traveling and acting. This is a person that obviously I can identify with. Obviously, she's your mom, and she, you're kind of ingrained in us, so to speak.
Mm,
So it's like, as you're coming on to speak about her journey, it kind of it says something about both um, her integrity, but also from her generation. That,
mm.
as you mentioned, I'm not quite sure how comfortable she is like doing big media tours and with her books and stuff. But her work speaks for itself, obviously,
No,
and
exactly. I mean, I
that's
think the thing
that's a
is this is I was going to say that on that sort of, she knows that I'll always happily represent it because I'm very comfy in front of an audience doing stuff like that. And she'll know as soon as she gets her next book done, it'll be out there. I'll get it published. I'll get it circulated. I'll get her into all the mags. And I think that's been the really nice thing about it. It's been a genuine mother-son collaboration on barely any budget, just my mum's writing skills and, for want of a better word, my sales skills.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, there's nothing like a good sales techniques and communication is key, obviously. And yeah, I always enjoy spending time with you. Now, how do your how do you see, is there potential connecting the generations, so to say, like, especially young readers and with older historical experiences? I think that's one of the things that I'm working on, getting some professors that are in here in the United States that are really working on improving, increasing, bringing back up the importance of teaching civics in schools
Mm-hmm.
and having younger generations understand um, how and why they are here and have all the benefits and capabilities and resources. Besides the fact of seeing a war, to then having the technology. How do you think that you know, can you see her work, permeating into potential school systems to tell that story, to help support these young minds, to make them understand there's a much more of a critical foundation
Well,
that's
funnily enough,
that
actually, I'm in the
needs to
process
be
of getting
aware
it
of?
distributed to schools in areas she's taught in. And when she made the press, literally her website got bombarded with loads of former pupils who went and bought out and bought the books. So it already technically has. Um, I've her sort of website contact form goes straight to my phone, and I get literally a message a day saying, "Oh, Jennifer taught me at Branscombe. I never knew she was a best-selling author. How can you get me in touch?" So I'm literally then WhatsApping my mum. Yeah, your former people, they're living in London now. Can you get back in touch with them? So it kind of has, but in a really organic way.
Yeah, that's beautiful because that can resonate generations, right? They can see that how that critical importance of the students she taught and them with their own families, which is, it's a beautiful thing. It just shows you the power of the creative spirit in that content of storytelling.
Definitely. And you made some excellent points about the lessons of the post-war world. And with certain bleak political happenings, as you've also mentioned, I think understanding the post-war era is actually pretty crucial because obviously the UK was very instrumental in beating fascism. So older generations, as you've identified, recognize it. Younger people don't quite understand how dangerous, shall we say, any form of authoritarianism can be, whatever form it might take. So I think understanding the post-war era is really crucial. Also, as well, actually, now, as you know, I'm very, very pro our NHS, and it's very part of British culture. But you do get a tiny minority, actually, to be fair, but you did get a tiny minority of young people thinking we'd be better off with an insurance system. It's so cringeworthy, as my mum was saying. They didn't know what it was like before the NHS. They didn't know what it was like, if like basically you didn't have any money, you couldn't get treated. That's not good. Do you know what I mean? So I think understanding that
Right.
era is it should be mandatory. Learning about World War II's got to be mandatory. And I'll say this again. I'm really, really proud that Britain fought in that and we, destroyed the Nazis. It's one of the best things
Right.
we ever did. And then, going from that tram to creating our absolutely beautiful NHS it makes you feel really proud. And that's, every country's got its good and bad points. But I think those particular things should be rammed home that we beat the Nazis and then we gave the world our great NHS. And that's history to be proud.
Yes, very much so. In that, they always talk about, if you don't understand and remember history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Definitely.
Um, and that's fantastic. And I have I've had my own visions of trying to establish, create, promote, and get my educational system out there to provide educators on a physiological level as a physiotherapist. Um, and the neuroscience is showing it every day in terms of ability to concentrate. And again, going back to self-care, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
responsibility that we all have for our own selves and to help regulate and control the need for, right? Lots of money to care for me because I'm not taking care of myself.
Mm,
So, a national healthcare system would include a proper educational system, right? To
mm,
both say, okay, this is how you stay healthy. But if you do get sick from uncontrollable factors, you're protected. You're not going to go bankrupt. This whole insurance system compared to the national healthcare system, which again, I truly believe that, when people, the social security that was created in America after World War II, and the societal, the socialism type of protections
mm.
that just goes back to resonate, that should be all unify every country in terms of what it means to be a strong country and realize that we're only as strong as our parts. And so again, I'll get off that horse. I always speak about, just so passionate about thinking how we need to, obviously, the healthcare system in our country, but without proper education and leading the charge to start these concepts of understanding how important it all is pieces of together.
Very
So
much so.
listen, so for my listeners who may feel maybe too late to pursue something meaningful, what would your mother's story, in your experience witnessing it, what would you say to them?
It's better late than never, but also now is the time where there's been more tools than ever. So you can literally just do it within a couple of months, if you really put your mind to it. You have so many tools now. Imagine if this was the 1970s where there was no internet, so you'd have to go to a massive publishing house to get your book signed. Sorry, to get your book published. Or if you were a musician, you'd have to get a record deal. There weren't many indie labels around back then. Now you don't even need an indie label. You can just get it up on Spotify. So the tools are there now. Arts should never, ever be for the elite. It should be for the people. It should be for the common man. It should be anyone with a good idea. Art is subjective. And also as well, don't be your own worst critic. You're always going to build. Use the example of Nirvana. Their early demos weren't Smells Like Teen Spirit, but they gave them that solid building block, to develop their own
Right.
sound.
And it's almost like get out of your own way, keep it coming, produce it. And that's what I've learned now that I'm such full steam, that I'm trying to actually keep producing and developing it for multiple fronts to be delivered on a platforms. on different platforms of these components of my identity and my creations, right? To bring purpose, to support education, to motivate people, to inspire them that, you know, now is the time. This is it. As my, you know, I follow out, you know, I love Alan Watts. And this is it. This is it. And between that and Joseph Campbell clarifying for me the fact that I didn't need to stress myself out and try to define what is the meaning of life, but more so what is your experience of being alive. And that, uh, Ed, I think you and your mom, Jennifer, KJ Akay, so eloquently has displayed that there is a, um, energies that need to resonate, to continue to resonate, and that this creative force that we attain, or not attain, but we actually are within us, to be able to express that is a beautiful thing. And obviously we know it's all about distribution.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your time and you sharing your
And
story.
you too.
Um, and I give your mom all my best, much respect, and I look forward to. I just had a guest on just recently, Eddie Brett from the former Lovable Rogues, who was a contestant on Britain's Got Talent.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. So I promised I'd be heading over to see him, sharing a bite, and we're going to have to do the same. Look forward to coming to your part of the world again. Or yeah, because I've been there before, but I've never had friends destination specific to go to. So I'll look forward to that potential, and again, talking to you some more later. And thank you so much, Ed, for your time.
And thank you as well, Greg. You're an absolute legend. Thank you. And thank you from my mum as well.
Hey, God bless. Thank you so much for the kind words. You take care, Ed. And till next time, everybody. We'll see you, kids. Bye-bye.
Professor.